The piano eases us in with a little mellow melody, with the accompanying wandering synthetic sound which gives the song a more mysterious and alive character. The music is lonely in a sense, wandering and repeating. There is motion and life, but maybe all meaningless. That's when the woman's voice appears, which adds a feeling of ascension, or maybe a search for meaning with the higher notes. There it stays and repeats itself, as if calling for something, like animal noises that try to verbalize something of importance. After that, the female voice falls back down where it came from. Interestingly enough, the same calling tones are repeated, but only once in comparison to the 2 times above. There is now an established hierarchy of searching through tone, 2 times up and 1 time down. There seems to be something worthwhile to go up there as opposed to down here. A calling to God? The melancholic duo of piano and synthetic sounds are still resounding in the background when they again come to the foreground once the voice ceases to sing. But now there is a lonesome, high note that accompanies the duo. It is soft and harmless, yet alone in the midst of the lower piano keys. Later, the synthetic tones vanish and the piano is left to solo with the contrast between the single high key and the low keys. One feature we haven't talked about is the synthetic organ in the background that has functioned as a basis for the melody. All of a sudden, there comes a very passionate, higher-pitched male voice. This second voice is repeating itself by going higher and searching in a similar way, up there somewhere with a calling of its own. It goes up, stays for a moment in one place, and then goes even higher where it calls for something. The contrast between the male voice and the female is that the former is a very passionate and loud one, which also searches high for meaning, but doesn't come back down. It stops but goes ever higher. The latter is alternating between ascending and descending and seems to search in one place more than the other, which is again high up. At this point, as the male voice is singing, the lower piano notes are really supporting it with sound and bass. After being left alone by the voice, the piano does a little solo again and wanders a bit, but not alone. A small bell-like sound plays with it at some points. Then the male voice comes back again. After that, the female one, with the help of the synthetic wanderer, they sing their same songs. The piano with the soft, lonesome key and the low keys sustain the melody after a stop of singing and bridge the song to the last part of the piece. Yet again, the male voice. It is persistent, passionate and relentless in its search for meaning in the heights. In the last moments of the song, its call is prolonged, but perhaps to to no avail as it echoes away into nothingness, not receiving any form of answer or response. The whole experience is a mix of emotions, which makes the soundtrack so great. The listener gets immersed in a whirl of humanness. There is life, but life is solitary and daunting, sad and mysterious. If there were no human voices to sing, the theme would have been comprised of the synthetic wanderer, the synthetic organ and the piano. Remember, they are the basis of it all, and by themselves they tell one melancholic and uncanny story. They represent the very essence of life. I think the voices set the stage for interpretation and bring some symbolism into it. The female and the male voices are interesting. The female is showing some kind of pattern of upward and downward movement and a hierarchical importance of where to search or call for meaning, but it is not wildly emotional. I'm going to borrow Carl Jung's terms of Animus and Anima. The female voice doesn't quite represent the Anima and her violent, destructive and chaotic character. Instead, she remains consistent. She could be Mother Nature, and that claim could be supported by the wandering synthetic sound, which is lively, as if symbolizing life itself. The Anima here could also be hinting at her structure by the placement and repeating of her calls. The world is being moved and dictated by powerful and unhuman beings, which means that one has to search beyond his comprehension. But then again, with the added context of berserk, the Anima could be interpreted as violent and destructive when we look at the principle of causality and sacrifice. In and of itself, Mother Nature is not bad, she's just the way she is. On the other hand, the male voice doesn't quite have the qualities of Animus: order, security and stability. Although it does show courageous and unrelenting traits in its search for meaning. It is also more reoccurring than the female voice in a ratio 3:2. There is also an aura of dramaticism around it. The theme is named Gutsu, or Guts' theme. It would make sense that the male voice is associated with Guts' story of suffering and tragedy, the echoing loneliness, the passionate cry for meaning, and the sense of deep sadness. Mother Nature is harsh to him, meaning Guts found himself on the wrong side of causality. And after all that has happened, and all that he had to endure, nothing changes. He can never undo what has been done during the eclipse, and he shall never escape his sacrificial mark. It is reflected in the succession of the male voice by the female one. The male sings ever so high, in search for something of essence and meaning, and then the female continues her song, the same as it was. The passion of the Animus hasn't changed the circumstances. But then again, the one who courageously asks for the meaning of life's suffering is in a way trying to bring some order, some sense into the world. I believe Guts despises the fact that apostles are being released in the human world and innocent people are tortured under their cruelty. There is a sense of urgency, personal and worldly urgency. The Animus searches with his eyes for order, and if the male voice is the Animus and the Animus is Guts, then we can also bring a comparison into the picture. Horus. Guts comes out alive but one-eyed after facing evil. Just like the rightful heir to the throne of Egyptian gods, Horus, who loses one eye in his battle with Seth, the embodied representation of evil. In their battle against the wicked, they have to sacrifice one eye. It is a form of exchange for knowledge and power, but also a sign that the struggler is searching for meaning and order. And that is not an easy task, hence why they lose something so precious. In ancient Egypt, the famous Egyptian eye was a sign of seeing and understanding things deeply. In contrast, eyes with no vision, or even worse, ignorant eyes, can't lead anyone out of life's chaos and will lead to the owner's demise. Susumu Hirasawa shows great comprehension of Berserk's world and Guts' condition by composing this masterpiece. It encapsulates emotions that heavily relate to the anime and manga and shows the genius of the talented composer. This is the first and probably only theme of Guts which will stay in the hearts of people for years to come, if not forever.